Ancient Echoes Special Episode: The Fall of the Mongol Empire, when the world's greatest empire broke apart. Introduction: The empire that shook the earth. Across the pages of history, few names strike awe like Genghis Khan. For nearly 2 centuries, the Mongol Empire stretched across continents, from the cold forests of Siberia to the deserts of Arabia, from Korea's blue shores to the gates of Europe. It was the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever seen. But just like every mountain that rises to the sky eventually crumbles, the Mongol Empire too began to fracture, slowly at first, then violently, until the pieces became separate worlds of their own. This is the story of how the unstoppable empire fell, a tale of ambition, betrayal, epidemics, political greed, and shifting powers. It is a story where great khans rise and fall, where brothers turn into enemies, and where the world itself changes forever. Welcome to today's Ancient Echoes episode. The Fall of the Mongol Empire, How the Storm Faded. The empire after Genghis, a giant without its founding spirit. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, the Mongol Empire was still rising. His sons and generals continued the conquests, pushing Mongol banners into Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia. Yet, the seeds of collapse were already planted. The Mongol way of succession. Mongol traditions had one major flaw. No clear rule on choosing the great Khan. Instead of passing power to the eldest son, the Mongols expected all princes to gather and select a leader through a grand council called Kurultai. In theory, this ensured unity. In reality, it created deadly rivalries. Every prince believed he had a right to rule. Genghis Khan's sons and their rivalries. Genghis had 4 main sons. Hochi the eldest but controversial. Chagatai strict and traditional. Ogday chosen successor. Tului youngest and powerful. Though Ogday became great Khan, tension brewed under the surface. Each son wanted more land, more influence, more control. These rivalries didn't explode immediately, but they waited like dormant volcanoes. Ogday and the First Fractures. Ogday Khan ruled powerfully for more than a decade. Under him, the Mongols conquered Russia, invaded Eastern Europe, took Persia, completed major cities of their empire. But Ogday had a weakness. He enjoyed drinking more than ruling. His health declined, and when he died in 1241, the Mongol world stood at a crossroads. The First Succession Crisis. With Ogday gone, the Mongol leaders could not agree on a successor. His wife Toragin Khatan took power as regent, the first sign that the empire wasn't following Genghis Khan's clear chain of command. Toragin pushed her son Gyaik to become great Khan, which he eventually did, but his rule was short and filled with disagreements with Batu Khan, Hochi's son, ruler of the Golden Horde. Other Tuluid princes. Several generals. For the first time, the empire felt divided. This crisis planted deep cracks in the foundation. Monk and Kublai the last rise before the fall. Monk Khan brings temporary unity. Tului's son Monk became great Khan in 1251 after a violent purge removing rival princes. He was strong, disciplined, and ambitious. Under him, the Mongols conquered Baghdad in 1258. Persia was reorganized. Kublai resumed invasions in China. Monki's rule looked promising, perhaps even capable of restoring unity. But destiny intervened. 3.2. Monki's death and the storm of civil war. In 1259, while leading a campaign in southern China, Monk died suddenly, either from wounds or disease. His death was catastrophic. 2 powerful brothers, Arikbok and Kublai Khan, both claimed the throne. The Tuluid Civil War 1260–1264. This war was the first major civil war of the Mongol Empire. Arikbok, backed by traditional Mongols of the steppes, represented the old ways. Kublai, supported by Chinese administrators and foreign allies, represented a more settled, cosmopolitan empire. The war tore the empire apart. Trade routes were disrupted. Armies clashed across Central Asia. Alliances shattered. Trust vanished. In 1264, Kublai won. But the victory came with a price. The empire was no longer united. The empire splits into 4 khanates. After the Tuluid Civil War, the Mongol Empire broke into major regions, each ruled independently. 1. The Yuan dynasty, China, ruled by Kublai Khan. 2. The Ilkhanate, Persia. 3. The Chagatai Khanate, Central Asia. 4. The Golden Horde, Russia and Eastern Europe. They still called Kublai Khan the Great Khan, but only symbolically. In reality, each khanate acted like a separate kingdom. This division became the beginning of the end. The Golden Horde versus the Ilkhanate, a family war. One of the biggest reasons for the empire's collapse was infighting between the khanates. Why they fought. The Golden Horde, descendants of Hochi, and the Ilkhanate, descendants of Hulagu, became bitter enemies because they fought over the Caucasus region. They disagreed on religious policies. They had old family rivalries. They competed for trade routes. For decades, they launched wars against each other. These wars weakened both sides, drained armies, and destroyed the unity the Mongols once had. Religion divides the empire. During Genghis Khan's time, the Mongols were known for religious tolerance. But after his death, different khanates adopted different religions. The Ilkhanates slowly converted to Islam. The Golden Horde embraced Islam more strongly. The Yuan dynasty, China, followed Buddhism. The Chagatai Khanate became a mix of Buddhism, Islam, and traditional beliefs. Religious identity replaced Mongol identity. Instead of, "We are Mongols," rulers began thinking, "We are Muslims. We are Buddhists. We are princes of our own land." The unity Genghis created through loyalty vanished. The Black Death, a quiet destroyer. Between 1347 and 1351, the Black Death devastated Eurasia. This plague did not spare the Mongols. Impact on the khanates. Trade routes collapsed. Populations fell. Armies shrank. Economies weakened. Administrations broke down. The Mongol Empire depended heavily on stable trade networks. When the plague shattered these roots, the empire entered chaos. The fall of each khanate. Now we explore how each region collapsed, one by one. The fall of the Yuan dynasty, China. Kublai Khan founded the Yuan dynasty in China and ruled successfully. But later Mongol rulers were out of touch with the Chinese population, dependent on Mongol aristocracy, unable to handle famines and floods, harsh in taxation, weak against rebellions. The Chinese people grew restless. The Red Turban Rebellion 1351–1368. A massive uprising led by peasants, monks, and rebels swept across China. In 1368, Zhu Yuanzhang, Hongwu Emperor, drove the Mongols out and founded the Ming dynasty. The Mongols retreated to Mongolia. Their Chinese empire was gone. The fall of the Ilkhanate, Persia. The Ilkhanate's fall came from succession disputes, economic collapse after the plague, local rebellions, over-reliance on Persian bureaucrats, lack of strong military leadership. After the death of Abu Sayyid in 1335, no clear heir existed. The region fragmented into smaller kingdoms. By the late 14th century, the Ilkhanate disappeared completely. The fracture of the Chagatai Khanate. The Chagatai region was unstable from the beginning. It faced nomadic versus settled population tensions, conflicts between Islam and traditional beliefs, pressure from Timur Tamerlane, who rose from this region. By the 1370s, Timur the Great effectively absorbed the Chagatai West into his own empire. The remaining eastern Chagatai territory became known as Mogulistan, but it no longer held power. The collapse of the Golden Horde. The Golden Horde was once the strongest khanate, but it fell due to civil wars between Mongol princes, Russian resistance and rising power, loss of trade routes, plague deaths, attacks by Timur. By the early 1500s, the Golden Horde split into smaller khanates. Kazan, Crimea, Astrakhan, Siberia, Nogai Horde. One by one, these khanates fell to rising powers like Muscovy, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire. The mighty horde faded into history. Why the Mongol Empire really fell. The root causes. Let's summarize the deep reasons behind the fall. Succession crises. No fixed rule on inheritance caused endless wars. Geography too vast. Communication was slow. Leadership was inconsistent. Unity was impossible across thousands of miles. Cultural differences. Persian, Chinese, Turkic, Russian, Arab, and Mongol groups wanted different things. Decline of steppe military power. Mongol cavalry supremacy weakened once other nations adapted. Economic breakdown. The Black Death and trade disruptions damaged Mongol strength. Rise of new powers. Russians, Ming Chinese, Ottomans, and Timurids all rose at the same time. Infighting. Family feuds destroyed unity more than enemies did. The legacy, what remained after the fall. Though the empire collapsed, its effects lasted centuries. Cultural exchange. Ideas, inventions, foods, and technologies moved across continents. Trade networks. Silk Road. Mongols revived and protected the Silk Road, connecting Europe to China. Military tactics. Mongol strategies influenced armies worldwide. Political models. States like Russia and China reorganized themselves after Mongol rule. Genetic and demographic impact. Mongol migrations and intermarriage shaped many populations. Even in collapse, the Mongol Empire changed the world permanently. The end of the empire that once shook the earth. The fall of the Mongol Empire was not a sudden crash. It was a slow unraveling, like threads pulled from a once mighty tapestry. What began with Genghis Khan as a united storm, ended as four khanates, many rival kingdoms, countless political disputes, a memory carried by history. Yet their achievements military, political, cultural echo across time. From Europe to Asia, the Mongols left footprints that can still be felt today. Their empire may have fallen, but their legacy lives on in the very foundations of the modern world.